Hi, welcome to another conversation with a chiropractor in practice and also someone who's involved in chiropractic education down in Marietta, Georgia Life University. This is the Precairo podcast. We're aiming to just build context for you and help you get clearer on why you might want to become a chiropractor. And if you're already planning to go to chiropractic school, we want to prepare you for that. So today we have Dr. Robert Shirley Love. Thank you so much for taking some time to provide some insights for our incoming chiropractic students.
Most welcome. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Can you share what attracted you to become a chiropractor and what you were up to before you went to chiropractic school?
Sure. Yeah. I have I think a unique story and an interesting story. I do not come from a chiropractic background or a chiropractic family. So immediately before chiropractic school, I was actually a United Methodist minister. So I went to seminary in Washington D.C. at Wesley Theological Seminary, and I was pastoring churches in the United Methodist system. And before that, prior to that, I came up in TV and radio. So kind of a multi-career stepping stone and stairway into chiropractic. But one of the things that we do in seminary that I've kept with me through my life is you do these exercises called gifts and graces inventories. And it's time when you get quiet and you really survey your life and you look for meaning and connection and depth and purpose and calling. And that's how I ended up in chiropractic is as I surveyed my life and my experiences and what things were coming together as and where I was being called is where I landed.
Can you take us deeper through that practice since you've helped facilitate that for other people? If I'm a prospective student, maybe I'm walking down the aisle and I see physical therapy, I see chiropractic, I see different medical professions. Maybe I think maybe I can just be a massage therapist, an athletic trainer, a personal trainer. Can you help somebody really take inventory on their life and help bring a parallel connection to where chiropractic is basically leading them, or if they choose this path, where it could lead them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have amazing love and respect for all the multitude of professions out there, and I think the key to anything is knowing where you're being led and where you're being called and where you can go serve at your highest order, your highest good, where you can give in a way that will have meaning and connection and depth for the world. And so I think it's tantamount. So one of the things you do in this particular exercise is you get real quiet. You have some meditative time or some prayer time, depending on your particular tradition and what you like to do. And you start to survey all of the experiences you've had in your life. So all of the education you've had in your life, the unique collection of teachers or professors or leaders or guides you have, which I know we were talking about before the broadcast, is a big part of my story, and our story. You start to look at why certain people were put in your life, and you'll look back and you'll see people that were put in your life for a season, right? For just a period of time. And you look at that. You look at experiences you were given, right? You look at jobs you've had. You look at people you encountered there. You look at just opportunities you had that are unique to your life. And you start to stack those up and see what kind of web is weaving, right? Like what comes together and nets up to point you maybe or guide you in a general direction. And what do those things mean when you put them all together? And then, for me, I'm not afraid to ask, right? Like, I'll ask God, I'll ask the universe, I'll ask, what does this mean? I'll ask, where am I going? Where am I headed? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? And then you look for answers and you listen for answers and you look in your environment around the world and see where else you're being drawn towards, right? What's calling out to you. So getting back specifically to the different professions now, once you do that, you should have some idea, some bearing. Then you got to really get a little bit soul searchy about how you want to serve humans, right? Like in this particular collection of professions, it's all about service to other humans, service to other people. And there's a need for all types of that care. There's a need for all types of chiropractic. Chiropractic's a big field, right? There are a multitude of different things you can do within chiropractic, and there's a great need for all of it. You know, on one far-reaching end, you know, there's incredible cutting-edge neurology work that's happening. On the other end, there's very basic musculoskeletal car wreck care, right? And both those things are equally important, right? They have a place and a purpose in the world, and it's a service that's needed on every level. And then there's a ton of things in the middle. You know, you talk about options and ways to serve humanity and serve people, and set people free and open up possibility for them. There's a ton of that. Now, similarly, you know, physical therapy is a great profession, and in some states by statute not far off from chiropractic. But then you get into the question of why are you doing what you're doing, and it's a big question. It's a big question for a lot of chiropractors. You know, if you get into taking care of the body and putting your hands on people, what is it that we're working with, and what is it that you're trying to accomplish? You know, are you trying to mobilize a fix or stuck or fixated joint, or are you trying to adjust and free a subluxation and a neurospinal system? And those are two different questions, even though the application may look very similar, like putting a force into a body to see if the body can receive that force and do something with it. The reason for doing that and the place and the time that you do that are massively different things. And so, you know, you ask yourself where you want to play on that spectrum. Where do you want to play in regards to drugs and surgery? And that's a huge question. You know, I think surgeons are rock stars, right? Like those guys and gals have incredible skill sets, and when they're necessary and needed, they're the most amazing givers on the planet. And I'm really glad that they exist. And if you have that gift, that's an incredible gift to explore, right? But at the same time, in my opinion, of course, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm super biased. There's an incredible need for care that centers on who and what we are and how we interact with the world, how we interact with Earth, how we interact with our being, our essence, and that needs to come from a drug-free place, right? There's a huge need in the world. You know, I know, no secret to you, but perhaps our listeners may or may not know, you know, Americans consume like 80% of the pharmaceutical drugs on the planet, but we have 5% of the population. In any level of statistic or science, there's something very off about that. You know, we're not meant to need that amount of pharmaceutical intervention. Now, pharmaceutical intervention has amazing applications when it's appropriate and needed, but we've got a massive disconnect in the world and what health and healing is and well-being. And I think you know, chiropractic is in a truly unique place to serve that, because we don't deal with drugs, and that's a huge caveat. Like if you want to get into that, you know, chiropractic is not the place to come and get into that. But there are other professions you can go into to be a DO or an MD or physical therapist, and there's lots of room for application for that. You can co-manage and work with those other professions, and that does happen if you set it up right and create those relationships and build trust in your community with other caregivers. But chiropractic is just in a truly unique place where, you know, we're a drugless, drug-free, surgery-free profession, and we have the unique opportunity to put hands on people and connect with them in a deep and meaningful way with their health and well-being.
On that note, can you share some of the experiences that a prospective student might look at and say, oh, this is actually pointing me towards chiropractic, or some opportunities that they might not be aware of, but that exist within their environment if they're on a college campus or if they have access to the internet? What are some things that people can connect with to really open their eyes to chiropractic? Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's an experience that they have in an office. How would you explain this like first, second, third step that somebody can take to really begin to connect with the profession, connect with the care?
Yeah, I think there's no substitute for experience, right? And this gets a little tricky because the internet's a big wild place, and there's some wild chiropractic videos out there. And I don't want to shy away from it. I'm gonna tell you, you go on Google and YouTube right now, you can see some wild stuff. There's some Kraken videos in there. There's some ring dinger videos, and there's network spinal waves. And I mean, you can see some amazing stuff. And some of it might look really crazy, right? If you have no experience and no encounter with this, you know, it'll pop your eyes. You know, what's going on? What is happening? Pop. But sorry, bad pun there. But there's amazing opportunities to see what's out there, right? And to encounter a lot of docs and a lot of what they're doing in the world and their practices online. But there's no substitute for getting in person. And you know, that may be taboo here in we're in 2020, the end of 2020 right now. It's very the world is very socially distanced and physically distanced and COVID conscious, and you know, it may be a little taboo right now to suggest going to places in person, but there's no substitute for human interaction. There's no substitute for being in the biofield of another being and for having that interaction. As much as I have enjoyed these kind of talks this year, getting into Zoom and being able to hop on different broadcasting platforms and talk with people that around the world, that's, you know, we don't have to be in the same place. It's amazing, but we miss that interactive energy and that interactive in between with us. And there's a quality to that. There's a quality that interaction that can never be replaced digitally. So what I would say is you need to get into some offices. And I say that plural, right? I use offices plural on purpose because chiropractic is a big, wide place, right? Physical therapy is a big, wide profession. There are lots of, medicine is a hugely wide profession. So you need to go and explore. And what I will tell you is, you know, hop on Google, see who's in your area and call around. Because, you know, I can speak for most chiropractors and I can speak confidently for a lot of medical practices. They're happy to have people come visit. They're happy to have people come shadow. You know, there may be, depending on your state, locality, what's going on right now, there may be some COVID like awareness that, you know, protocols you have to have in place and keep everybody, you know, in compliance with guidelines and recommendations and whatnot. But we love when we have people come shadow. And I'm, you know, I'm in a unique position down here by Life University. I have people in the office all the time. We have people every week. We have students in the office coming to visit, or their family or their friends or prospective students, or, you know, there's always people here and we love that. So call around, see who's in your area, see what they do, and go get a taste, you know, see the different types and different experiences, and just know it's a big wide world. Some of it will look the same, some of it will look very different, but that's a great exposure to have and a great way to see a lot of stuff. And the same thing, like I say, same thing true. I'm reasonably confident for physical therapy. I'm totally confident for medicine. There are lots of offices out there that would love to give you the opportunity to come shadow, to come see, to be a part of something. And there's no substitute for that. Just getting in the energy of it and seeing what it actually is.
Having hosted so many prospective students and obviously been in multiple offices yourself on your own journey, can you talk a little bit about the details that a student should set for themselves, some of the intentions they should set for themselves when they approach an office? Because it might be a little different than just go see the office. Like, how can we create some more structure around what they're looking to experience, what they're looking to observe, some questions they should have for themselves as they enter an office such as yours?
Certainly. Yeah. And I might just add this too. Yeah, shameless plug, confession up front. I'm a part of Life University. Life does an amazing job having prospective student weekends, and there's a program called Life Leadership Weekend. And so I just want to give a shout out to that. I don't have anything to do with that program. I have no involvement in it or interest in it in that regard. But they do an amazing job of bringing people in and having an experience on campus, seeing the chiropractic campus, seeing the clinic, seeing things going on, encountering chiropractors. It's put on by a group of chiropractors and life force docs that come in and give their time to volunteer and be with you. So one thing you can do is, if you're interested, and I know some other schools do similar things too. So there are opportunities to get on campuses around the country in chiropractic where you can have an experience and get a taste with no commitment necessary. And the cost is covered when you come to Life. I can't speak to other schools, so I just don't know. But there's definitely opportunities out there to come have experiences on campuses. So do that if you're leaning in that direction.
Yeah,
But
100%. I can echo that. I agree. I think that these leadership weekends give you an immersive experience. Even if you don't choose to go to that school, you come away with a greater depth and clarity of what chiropractic's all about. So,
absolutely. And and it's funny. I'll go back. It would be equally as valuable to you to know if chiropractic is not right for you.
100%.
Right. That's huge. Like, we talk about knowing what we want, but knowing what not to choose is very powerful in life, right? And so, it's okay if chiropractic's not for you. That's fine. That's not a problem. But it's a good opportunity to come see, right? So, but if you were coming to my office, or if you want to any office, let's put some structure around it. Let's draw some borders. Questions to ask is could I really see myself doing this every day? I mean, really simple. You really think about not just your exciting one day experience. Every experience is usually pretty exciting for one day when you check out something new, right? But when you think about what it is to do that day in and day out for a career, we're talking a span of time, years, decades. Is this something you can see yourself doing? There's a physicality to certain kinds of chiropractic, right? Like sometimes things are really cool, but are you in the physical position to do some of this care for years, decades, right? That's important. Is this the type of service you want to give? Right? Just because it's cool. I think surgery is cool. I do not want to be a surgeon. Right? I admire getting the opportunity from time to time to observe surgery. I've had the chance to scrub in and see some really amazing surgeries. But I would never want to do that. I have great respect for it. It's just not something that I could see myself doing. At least in a career sense, I could see myself doing something once, but I could not imagine doing that as a career. So that's good perspective.
Let me get more specific. Let me help you build structure. So as a precairo student, I'm recommending people start to look at their journey of building skill sets, of developing skill sets in these 5 areas. So the first one is becoming a chiropractic scientist. When you hear becoming a chiropractic scientist, how would you reflect on ways that you have, as you've become a chiropractor, drilled into the sciences, and what are the chiropractic sciences if you were to just reflect on them for a moment?
Certainly. Huge. I think we have a duty and an obligation to bring the science. Mentor of mine and confession here, I do some pretty wild chiropractic. Like I do some pretty far out there stuff as far as I'm concerned. And if I think it's on the edge, it probably is. But I think we have a duty and a responsibility to bring that back to some grounded explanation and some science. And one of my mentors is a guy named Dr. Donnie Epstein. And if you Google Donnie, you will see some wild stuff. But one of the gifts that Donnie brings that I really love is he has this ability to look at something and say, well, we can see that it works in reality. Now let's go make it work in theory. Right? And he kind of works backwards, and he deploys a lot of resources in a lot of ways. You talk about a guy that can cross over and deal with medicine, with PhD mathematicians, just really has brought, something to the nature of 25 universities have participated in research studies with Donnie in medical schools, University of Southern California, University of Texas, some big heavy hitters. And taking what we see in reality, chiropractic has, 125 years of I don't want to call it anecdotal evidence, but of evidence of people in reality getting well, getting better. And we haven't always been the best at explaining why, right? And there's a limit to resources and possibilities, especially through that time. For a lot of struggle in the mid years of chiropractic politically and getting licensed and things like that. And so we didn't always do the best job of going back to explain why things were working. We've seen miracles at every stage of chiropractic. We see miracles in office. I'm sure you can speak to being in office, see miracles weekly. I have a sign on my door that says "Expect miracles." That's how much we want to participate with that. But we also have that duty to see it in reality and then make it work in theory, work back and explain what we're doing and bring it to the forefront. And there's some incredible gems of things happening in the world right now. Research has never been more alive in chiropractic. If you are a scientifically minded, research oriented person, this is a great time to be in chiropractic. Foundation for Vertebral Subluxation doing amazing things. The Australian Foundation doing some amazing things. Lots of really powerful science-minded people working on big projects. So I think it's a great time to study. And I think, my personal bias too, I actually worked 4 years as a research assistant at Life University when I was going through the doctorate program. My personal bias too is we've got to do a better job at reaching out across different fields and putting more minds to task on what we're doing. Because one of the gifts that another mentor of mine, Dr. Jim Chestnut up in Canada, one of his great gifts, he was a researcher and very gifted, physiology minded person before chiropractic. And one of his great gifts is the ability to scour journals from other professions. And I think there's so much more, I don't want to say proof, but so much more information available to us right now than what we have access to, because we're not looking in all the right places, right? And we need some people that can go out and scour research journals and look across the other professions and the other fields and see what's out there to link stuff together. The ultimate goal here is going to be, how do we weave together a story that makes sense? We don't have to do it all ourselves. Some of this work has been done for us. Other professions study the body. Other professions also study muscles, also study nerves, also study the neurospinal system, and we can tap into that. And then I truly see a point in the near future where it's going to be very exciting to collaborate on that front. There are things happening in the world that weren't happening just even 10, 15 years ago. When you look at the mind-body institutes at Harvard and Stanford, those things didn't exist the way they did just a few years ago. And there's an incredibly different take on how interactive you can be with health and well-being. And so even other professions are looking at things in a new way. And it's our time to shine if we can step up to the plate.
Yes. And stepping up to the plate is something that I hear often spoken about in chiropractic seminars. These days, holistic medicine is bringing forth that which chiropractic has been sharing for a really long time. The only difference is that the way that holistic medicine is bringing themselves forward is through evidence of research that they went into clinics and observed that they've never cared about prior to now, where we're seeing amazing things being published that you never would have seen before. Two people you mentioned, Dr. Donnie Epstein, he published research on how something that is so gentle and yet so impactful on people affects things beyond their physical well-being, that it affects their social well-being and the way that they make choices in their lifestyle. So I invite anybody listening to this to go check out some of the articles that have been published with the title Network Spinal Analysis in it, or Reorganizational Healing. And then also Jim Chestnut has created what's called a health risk assessment, that you can download a free health risk assessment for yourself. And he's compiling data from all different clinics that are using these scientific instruments in their clinics to demonstrate how chiropractic care can impact somebody's health and well-being in the behavioral choice realm, in the way that you view your body, the way that you have higher self-esteem or a stronger body image, or more trust in gratitude, and just really interesting information that is now being compiled for publishing in the near future, where they're gathering information from multiple chiropractic clinics to bring forth studies that show chiropractic care impacts your whole life not just a specific back pain ailment or a specific physical condition. So I
Yeah.
think that the two people you mentioned are doing an amazing job at bringing forth scientific literature that demonstrates the connections we have to
Yeah, I
lifestyle.
concur completely. And I think, yeah, isn't that what holistic cares about, right? The whole being,
Mhm.
looking at not just what are we doing to this one area of the body or life, but what effect does that have on the person, right? What effect does that have on the being?
Mhm.
The psychosocial factors, the mental emotional factors, like, what does it mean? I had a fascinating conversation with a colleague at Life yesterday, for about 2 hours, and we just went down a rabbit hole, and it was great. So I invite you guys all into this fresh rabbit hole of mine, or rabbit hole that I'm in. It's not mine, but what does it mean if chiropractic, if working with the neurospinal system allows somebody to come out of defense physiology, right? What does it mean to that person's life? What does it mean to that person's well-being to walk out in the world not in physiological defense, right? And I'm not talking just psychological defense. I'm talking true physiological defense, when their system is locked into a place of defense. Vertebrates, when we get in defense, we curl up, right? We tuck our head, we tuck our tail, we get into a defense physiology, and there's a whole follow through to that. There's defense physiology hormones, there's defense physiology posture, there's defense physiology psychosocial. The way you process information changes when you're in defense versus when you're not, right?
Mhm.
When you're sympathetic and parasympathetic, the way your brain can receive, your spine can receive and process information changes. The system, the signals that get sent from the symptoms, from mechanoreceptors, proprioceptors, nociceptors, changes. The hormone cascade that's available, the brain reward cascade that's available or not available, changes. So as you're in defense or not defense physiology, your interaction with the world, your ability to receive and uptake information around you changes.
Mhm.
And I think that, to me, man, that's the kind of conversations we need to be having in the classroom, in offices, in research, looking at that whole picture of how the organism changes, how the being changes in response to care.
If we center ourselves on that as pre-chiro students, and then we enter into chiropractic school with this awareness that when I go through my science classes, I'm looking at the normative values, because that's what homeostasis looks like. That's a dynamic equilibrium that a person is really able to express when they're not in defense physiology, or they're not in defense posture or defense hormones. And we start to see these connections as we go through the program. What would that mean for the future of the profession? What's possible if we can come together with a deeper understanding of how great chiropractic is for human expression
Mm.
and helping people reach a greater human potential in their life? What would that mean for our communities? What would that mean for our schools? What would that
Yeah,
mean for the profession?
I think your question's spot on, and not just what does it mean for the profession. What else you're saying? What does it mean for humanity?
Yeah.
Right? What does it mean for us as a set of beings? Right? For the whole picture. One of the real blessings of my experience is I got to come through the program observing the perfection of the design, right? Because of my unique viewpoint on what it was I was studying, right? And uh, you learn differently when you see it that way, right? You learn differently when you come into it with that kind of perspective. And it allows you to receive information differently. You don't look at a machine that's breaking down. You look at a design that's perfect, and what alters it from its perfection and from its perfect expression and its ability to go down that path. And that it's an entirely different learning experience. It's an entirely different set of outcomes that are possible. So, I urge anyone, and again, like I said, chiropractic's a big wild world. There's lots of variants of care and lots of other things you can do. And I urge anybody who's got that kind of inclination to, yes, center yourself on that possibility, center yourself on coming in with the understanding that as we affect anything in the body, we affect everything in the body. Healing
Mhm.
cannot be segmental. Healing does not happen in an isolated way. Healing happens across the whole spectrum, and that's the only way. So as we do anything, we're affecting everything, and that's a huge, huge picture to come in with and understand. You know, when you learn anatomy with a tensegrity model in mind, and you don't isolate parts, but you realize how any one part affects the whole. When you learn physiology, not with the isolated hormones in mind, not with the isolated, you know, biochemical cascades in mind, but understanding that their participation in a giant process, it's a different game, and you get to see and observe the world in a different way. And I think we need more minds in the world for the future of humanity. That's the only way to move us all forward.
Yeah, and I think the movement that started decades ago, if not over a century ago within chiropractic, is that if we just started to create chiropractors that had a clarity and understanding of their purpose to affect change in human beings and in their communities, and how that could make an impact in the community to keep a stronghold where people, or a beacon of light where people could come to the practice and get that light bulb turned on, how that would
Yeah.
trickle down through the community. I think that my intention with precairo is really, if a new school is getting started in a new country, or if we can inspire a new school to get started in a new country, that precairo is the infrastructure that primes people to go to school, that they get clear on what the intention is. If you're going to go become a chiropractor, you're going to create change. You're going to be a change agent. You're going to be an influencer in your community in as positive a way as you possibly can. And that's where these conversations are coming from my intention. And I just see there being a strong disconnect, and in incoming students being clear. Some people are trying to get away from certain things. Some people are trying to just get a title. But people are a lot of the times not really clear on what are we doing here. And I think that there would be a lot more joy, there would be a lot more fulfillment in the experience that a student has going through chiropractic education if what you just described was at the center of where they were coming from. Like you just said, center yourself on us looking at this perfection in the design and how it goes astray, but also how the healing process works. It's not always going to be pretty. People are
Yeah.
going through a lot of stress, a lot of different types of things, toxicity in the environment. And as a chiropractor, you're uniquely thinking about how to address these core causative factors. So can you
on that note, real quick, I just want to follow up on something you breezed in there in the middle. Is it not evident that the world needs more leadership at this time? Right? Like, I don't care what political side of the spectrum you're on. Like, is it not painfully evident that we need leadership at the ground level at this time? That we need leadership in our communities, that we need leadership in healthcare, that we need leadership in hope, in possibility, in expanded thinking. Like, we need leaders to step up. We need chiropractors to step up. We need pastors to step up. We need community members and community leaders and scout troop leaders and choir leaders and mayors to step up in a big way. We need new leadership to step forward and say what's possible for humanity, what's possible for health, what's possible for well-being, right? And so getting this mindset around not only experiencing these things and coming into it with that framework, but that you can take that and you can go out and influence your community. You can see hundreds, if not thousands of people. You can hold talks. You can have influence over not just your life or your practice member's life, but your entire community. That you can shape lives that way is so powerful and so key. And I think too, something else you said triggered a thought. Chiropractic comes from a premise 125 years ago that there's a universal intelligence present in all things, given to it all properties, and thus maintaining existence. We start, our first key principle in chiropractic starts with a universal intelligence, and then you come down from that and we break down other thoughts like innate intelligence and what the things are that run the show and where that comes from. And I think there's a whole field of science being developed around those concepts right now, not just in chiropractic, but there's going to be an explosion of that. And that's something some chiropractors have shied away from because it's such a big idea. It's such a big level of thought that it's scary from time to time, right? But if we come from an organizing intelligence, if there's a universal intelligence, if there are layers of this intelligence, then we have an obligation, again, to what you were saying earlier, to bring that back down to science, to study it, to break it down, to make it digestible, to get it into bits we can think about and talk about and communicate about and improve on, and take that out to the community and lead.
And speaking of leadership, what would you say is some good policy changes that could be made by our leadership to be more inclusive of chiropractors, or just be more inclusive of people that are promoting the right things in the community? What would it look like to make some changes on a structural level to society?
That's a tough question, and I don't want to pretend to have all the answers, but I will claim to have a couple of them. I don't have all the answers, but yeah, I'm blessed. I come from a semi-political background as well. My grandfather was a lifetime politician. He was a senator in West Virginia, and so I've had a unique insight into that world, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very thankful to that. I think there comes a time, and there's just a lot of forces moving in the world right now. This COVID time, I don't know when you're watching this video. If you're watching this live, you're in it right now. If you're watching this in a couple of years, it may or may not be different. I don't know what it'll look like in a year or two. But this COVID time is a real polarizing time for our country and our world. And it's brought up some issues. Talk about defense physiology, right? I look around the world right now and I see defense spines everywhere. You can see it in people's posture. You see people's heads pulled down. You see people with anterior head carriage. You see people with their tails tucked. You see, literally, you can see defense in people's spines. You can see it walking around. And one of the most powerful motivators, one of the two most powerful emotions in the human existence is fear. And fear is running the show right now. And going back to leadership, it's time. We must have leaders that step up from all walks of life, from healthcare, from spirituality, from politics, that step up and restore faith and hope, right? And I think that's first and foremost. We have to know that we can move forward. Even I don't care where anybody stands on this virus, this pandemic. We need to start talking about the hope and the possibility and recovery and treatment and prevention as much as we're talking about case counts or death counts or whatever the current statistic of fear is. But there's so much fear being promoted right now without the balance of hope, and that's a problem. That's a policy problem. That's a leadership problem, and that must change, because nothing good comes from fear. Nothing good comes from defense. You can't, to quote another mentor, I'm sure yours, of mine, of lots of people, Bruce Lipton, an organism cannot be in defense and growth at the same time. Right? And we're doing everything from a defense place right now, everything from a fear-based place right now, and that's never going to lead us to where we need to be. That's never going to lead to the solution. It's just going to keep us in a state of defense and retreat, and it's not good. So, I think policy changes at this juncture right now, and we're starting to see it, but the fear is so powerful. There's so much resistance to it right now, and it's going to take powerful leaders to overcome that. But we're at a point where we're 9 months or so into this, pandemic in 2020, coming into 2021 here in a couple days. I think it's high time that we look and realize we're 9 months into this, and we haven't done the things we should do to get people healthier, to get people stronger, to create better immune systems, to create better function. And we have to start looking at that. If they're predicting that this pandemic, and I hate to even use the word, but that's what they're, the term that's being said. If they're saying this is going to last another year, well, then what are we going to do? What are we going to do for the next year? Because if this virus is going to be, circulating for another year, you can't hide from it, right? And that defense can't be our answer. Fear cannot be our answer. We need to talk about, what can people do? What are the evidence-based things? Talking about bringing science down. What are the evidence-based things? What can we do to improve immune function, right? What can we do to improve neurospinal system function, the nervous system function, right? What can we use in our life that America's or the world is incredibly deficient? What about things like vitamin D, right?
Mhm.
I mean, let's just talk without even going crazy. And I can go down the rabbit hole of crazy too, but without, I mean, just mainstream things that even the medical community is not going to be at odds with. When are we going to look at this and say, well, it's been 9 months and we didn't do the things, and we're saying it's going to be another 9 months or another year? Are we just not going to do things? We need hope dealers. We need possibility dealers to step forward and step up in a big way. And it's got to be big enough to overcome the fear. And it's real. The resistance is real.
I would say that right there, what you just touched on and described, is one of the biggest reasons we need more people looking at chiropractic as a profession that is in alignment with who they are. If you're not in a place of fear that your body is too weak to deal with the external circumstances, or that you don't value reacting, but you want to prevent and you want to be proactive and build resilience within, then becoming a chiropractor, that's the philosophy that we're coming from. And that's who you can be for the community that you wish to serve. So,
Exactly.
I mean, that right there, I think, is a great just final message to anyone out there considering this path. And if you have any further inquiries for Dr. Love, he has a book published that's out right now. We'll put it in the link below. And please feel free to share this with anybody that you think needs to hear this message, because we need more people coming from a place of hope. And we need to start to tip the balance, because you're right, there's so much fear in this world, and you're not going to be operating out of a place of hope and love and abundance if you're reacting to something that has been maybe put in place by our society, maybe by the consciousness of the humans that live amongst us in our communities. But if you want to be that person in your community that's bringing hope, that's bringing awareness of our bodies being capable and adaptable and creative, this is the way, I think, that
Definitely.
you can do that. So thank you so much, Dr. Love. I appreciate you. Have a
Oh,
great day.
brother, thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll have another conversation in the future sometime.
Love it, man.
We could probably talk for hours, but I just want to acknowledge time, and I'm going to let you go, and happy New Year's to you. We'll talk soon. All right. Take care of yourself.
Thank you much. Take care.
All right. Peace.